Hello everybody and welcome to the Human Echoes recap for Better Call Saul Season 3 Episode 7. I would say that the arc word for this episode, for me anyway, would be fallout. This episode deals with a lot of repercussions for things that have already happened in the show, starting with the cold open. Beautifully shot, especially at the beginning. That wonderful Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul style where you see something and it filters in and you don't know what you're looking at. But once you understand, once the answer has been revealed to you, it's immediately obvious. And here we get one of those shots. It's Jimmy standing up against this wall, and then this really rough-looking guy with a beard comes up, and a bunch of other people, just like this incredibly diverse cast of people, and you're like, what? Why are all these people standing against the wall? And of course we find out it's because they're there. Jimmy's reporting for community service. They all get taken under this bridge. They're picking up trash. They got their little trash picker-uppers. And Jimmy is in the process of trying to continue his venture that he had from last week. He's got his commercial selling business. He's going gung-ho. He's got calls coming in. He's taking those calls on his cell phone. He knows he shouldn't. All right, I want to establish that. He keeps looking over his shoulder. He thinks he's getting away with it. He takes all these calls. He's still picking up trash. And things aren't going well on the calls. And to top it off, things don't go well with his community service hours because he wasn't getting away with it. The guy gives him 30 minutes of community service for 4 hours of work. And Jimmy is indignant, and he points out, rightfully so, that he did pick up more trash than anybody else. He has 2 bags, everybody else has 1, but he ain't supposed to be on his phone. He gets his hours docked, and from there he goes, cleans up with some single-serving wet ones packs to go to his commercial job. By the way, I just want to drop in a quick moment here. If you're in this situation, right? If you're Jimmy McGill or somebody living out the trunk of your car and you're going to shower out of a box, right? Get some baby wipes. These single-serving wet ones are, like, so not efficient at all. You got to, like with the little pack and everything. No, maybe... As I'm thinking about it, maybe the idea here is that he stole these from like a restaurant or something. Like he's that far rock bottom. But if you got the choice, get some baby wipes, guys. They're just so much easier to deal with. He's get done with his community service. He washes himself up, and we get more film crew stuff. Our trio is back. We get a lot of them this episode. I don't know how this arc is going to play out, if we're going to keep seeing more of them in future seasons, but I'm loving everything I'm getting of them. Jimmy's there shooting a chair warehouse commercial, and the guy, I just got to shout out, the guy who is in this commercial is amazing. He looks like, I don't know if he is a local, if he, like, they actually got the guy who owned that chair warehouse, but he does this great awkward, but not super awkward, like, he's okay. He's just an amateur at making film commercials, and Jimmy does a great bit of directing and sells him on it, tries to upsell him. The guy's like, yeah, I'm not doing the upsell here. I'm only going to do the one commercial. And, you know, he passes out the money to the people, and he's struggling here. He's doing good work. You know, we don't get to see this guy's commercial. Maybe a pretty cool extra feature if they don't end up showing it on the show. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere. That would be cool. We don't get to see his commercial, but the assumption here is that Jimmy does a good job. That Jimmy is helping this guy out, and not helping him out. I mean, he's helping himself out too, obviously, but he's not slacking off. But again, he just cannot catch a break. And we then see him, you know, even further down the hole. Him and Kim are doing expenses. He gives her his half of the rent. Kim says, did you clean out your bank account? And he says, no, but what he means is, yes, I did, and I'm not going to tell you about it. Not good news for Jimmy. And I want to mention also this idea of him lying to Kim about draining his bank account happens a couple times further on in the episode, and I think between his actual problems in the wake of this trial and Kim's emotional problems that we'll talk about in a little bit, this is gonna be the wedge that comes between them. he's trying to hide from her how desperate he is. And I think she probably isn't fooled. But she is dealing with a lot of real stuff. And you starting to see in this episode the cracks coming between these two. And it's tragic because you obviously have such great chemistry together. And yet we know that their relationship is probably doomed. He stiffs the Chinese delivery guy, calls back to the "we can make it zero" line from the guy at the beginning when he's arguing about his community service. And we then get Mike pouring those footers that we talked about last episode. I had all kinds of big conspiracy theories about how maybe they were going to hide a body under there. Turned out, maybe not. Maybe it's just character development for Mike, guys, which is fine. I loved the evolution of this scene and how you have Mike, he's doing work on his own. Mike works on his own, right? He's really good at doing what Mike does. And he gets, he's about pretty far along on one of the first footers, and there's these people come over and they want to help. They don't know nothing about concrete. Mike doesn't know nothing about working with people, but, he's compelled to work with these guys, not just in a sense that, oh, you really need the help, but also he has to socialize at some level. And cracking open this socialization egg, he meets this woman, Anita, who he's showing how to, texture the concrete so the kids don't fall on it when it gets wet. And there's this connection there that comes out of this other life that Mike wants to have, right? We know that Mike wants to, we see him now that he had that desire to create, and he wanted to make something. He gets to make something now, and now in making something, he also is making connections with these people, and meets this woman. The relationship evolves in a later scene a little bit as well, but it's great to see Mike kind of playing outside of his criminal box a little bit. It's a wonderful direction to take that character. Meanwhile, Nacho is trying to solve his Hector problem. And who does he go to? And this is one of those moments where the brilliance of the writing of these shows absolutely shines through, because this is such an obvious choice. We have a pharmacist. We have somebody who works in actual pill-making stuff established in the show, but I didn't even think about it until I saw where Nacho was going. He goes to our pimpin' drug dealer friend from the first season. I don't know if he showed up in second season. Mr. Crying Pie. And all of his wonderful locks and alarms and everything, and Nacho's just sitting there in his chair waiting for him. And Nacho wants him to give him these pills. He says, listen, all I want is the empty pills. That's it. It's probably not even illegal. There's probably some legality about the handling of drug paraphernalia and stuff, but really, he's not asking him to do something hugely outside of his legal bounds, especially since he's been selling drugs, pretty heavily already. And he's understandably rattled, but he kind of accepts the job. But he goes to Mike and says, listen, I need some help. Not just back. He wants something from me. And he tells Mike what he wants. Mike initially turns him down. And you can see why Mike would want to be getting out of this job, especially with this guy, right? Like, Mike may be willing to work with the criminal element, but he doesn't want to work with the idiot criminal element. But he turns him down, and after that we get a meeting with Kim at Mesa Verde, which I think really, again, it goes to speak to that splintering of her and Jimmy's relationship. And we see, A, she's under a lot of stress and not getting much sleep, which we already kind of knew, right? We knew that she was really working hard for these guys. But B, that she's very much dealing with the guilt of what they did to Chuck. She can't, she gets praised in the opening of this scene in what I would assume are sentiments that echo many viewers of this show. I'm like, oh man, he sure gave it to that jerk of an old guy. Wow, what a moron. Who talks like that? And she's there, she snaps over just some numbers and stuff. Really, I mean, she's probably technically in the right, but really goes overboard with her response to the woman who got her the job. And she has to walk it back a little bit. She says, listen, I'm sorry about how my attitude was. And then she reveals what it was that had irked her so much. It's not about the numbers. It's not even about the stress, although I'm sure that's part of it. And it's piling onto the stress that she already has, but she cannot deal with the guilt of what they did to Chuck. She knows that it was wrong, or at least in her mind, it was wrong. Again, there's the whole argument, well, she doesn't know how bad he is, and Jimmy does. But at least for her, this was too far. And she wishes that they hadn't gone that far. And, we get Jimmy again with another Wet Ones, another commercial failure, and a great moment where he pays the crew off even though he didn't make any money. And the makeup lady comes to him. She reminds me of Deb from Napoleon Dynamite. I don't think it is the same actress, but she has that kind of same nerdy, pretty look that Deb had going on, and the same attitude, the same sort of innate kindness, because, again, this trio is amazing. You got the sort of jerk director guy. He's all too cool for everything. He knows, he's just here for his money. You're going to pay me whether or not we do the commercial, so whatever. And then there's sort of the doofy sound guy, and then here's her, and she's not the best, obviously, in the world, but she cares about people, and she cares about Jimmy, and she tries to give the money back to him, and Jimmy won't take it, and says, listen, you earn that, that's yours. But it's a huge blow to him. He's continuing to fail here, and it's interesting to see this nitty gritty of what his character is going through, to drag him through all these details, because it's not just about the details of what's going on. It's also about sort of breaking him down as a character. There's a real journey that's happening here for him, and I love that. I love what he's going through here, and them showing this, even though you could argue it's kind of belaboring the point, and I honestly want to see him succeed. Just because the show's about him and you really want to see him succeed. And wouldn't it be great if he found this commercial business and it just worked out for him? But no, at least at this point, it's not working out for him. There was initial positivity. It looked like things were going to go good, but he just cannot get any traction on this. He's going through all this community service. He's out there in the sun. He can't transact his business while he's out there doing his community service. And all of these things are piling up to him. If we take a break from that just a minute, though, to go back to Mike, who meets with Anita again, you get the sense they don't say anything about this, but just my read on this is that he was a little bit happier to go to these meetings for, I assume, widowers. I don't know if there's Widowers Anonymous, whatever, but people who have lost their husbands and wives, and this woman is there, and he strikes up a conversation with her and finds out what happened to her husband, about how that he had gone hiking in the mountains and just never came back. And she's pretty much dealt with it at this point. It's been several years for her. She's been through a lot of this therapy and a lot of these group sessions, but it triggers something in Mike. This idea of this innocent person being lost ticks something over in his brain, and he goes to the pharmacist again, whose name I've forgotten, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't look it up before I started doing this, but he changes his mind and says, listen, I'll help you. And I liked that, it wasn't immediately apparent what he was thinking. And I read a lot of things about, maybe he thought about that there was a drug deal that went bad and the husband stumbled on it, and that, a lot of deals go down in those sort of remote areas. Maybe he was just thinking about, the Good Samaritan that stopped by and helped out and then it ultimately got killed. I don't know specifically, but I think that in general, the idea here is that Mike wants to avoid as much innocent bloodshed as possible. And he gets pulled into this situation where Nacho, he thinks he's protecting pharmacist guy from Nacho. And yet, when he gets into the situation, Nacho explains himself and explains the predicament from the last episode. And I think what Nacho's going through is also really going to speak to Mike, because Nacho's in this place where he doesn't want an innocent to get dragged in. Specifically, in this case, the innocent is his dad, but Mike understands that sentiment. Mike has been there. He has done that. He is willing to deal with all the corrupt people all day long because he understands that he's in that world, but he doesn't want to bring innocent people into it. And so he starts grilling Nacho, saying, hey, what's your plan here? How are you going to do it? You're going to have to do this. And my suspicion is Mike would really like to take over for this job. I don't know that he's going to be able to, because Hector, I think, knows him. I'm running back in my mind trying to figure out if Mike has run into Hector, and I cannot remember. Oh, yeah, of course he has. He had gotten into the whole confrontation with Nacho and the punch. My bad, guys. Wow, brain fart there. So Mike isn't going to be able to do this himself, but he really wants to make sure Nacho does it right because he sympathizes with Nacho's plight. And that evolution of Mike and Nacho kind of trying to protect Nacho's family, and Mike having this noble reason to do his Mike thing, is something that I'm very much looking forward to in the coming episodes of the show. But we don't get much more of the details there. We do get Jimmy and Kim going to the casino, scoping out more cons. And here, and I've said this already twice before, but I think for real, we're seeing the cracks in this relationship really starting to split open. Because there's this moment where Jimmy, he's had so many failures and he's so far in the hole and he needs a win, and he sees this guy who's being a jerk about his drink, and he starts spinning out this con to Kim, and he's like, we are going to sell this guy a worthless credit card, probably his worthless credit card, by the way, for $5,000. And he starts running down the plan, and Kim stops him and says, we're just talking here, right? And the moment there is important, because we see again that these two people have personalities that are fundamentally incompatible. Maybe not personalities, but their values are fundamentally incompatible. And we see that further because Kim brings up Chuck and her reservations about that. She says, wasn't there something else we could do? She doesn't even know that there was something else that they could have done. She was on board with the plan at the time, but it's just not sitting right with her, and Jimmy's not having it. Jimmy is in a completely different place. He has completely shut Chuck out. He's completely gone stone cold, and you see Kim realize this, and there's this look, this really long moment where the camera just focuses on her face, and Ray Seahorn does an amazing job again. I talked about a couple episodes ago, there was that one moment where she just delivered one line, and just one word, and it was possibly more powerful than all of Jimmy McGill's spinning up of explanations and things when he was talking about why he didn't call her to court. Here, she doesn't say anything, but you see the wheels clicking in her head and how she's trying to justify staying with Jimmy, and is it worth it, and can I live with myself with all of this stuff? And it's just powerful. It was just a great moment. She doesn't leave him. It's not the moment of the split, physically speaking, but you can see that diversion starting to happen, and I love that. I love how well she's able to put that across. And that is, again, a testament to just the team that works on this, because it's not just the cinematography. It's not just the writing. It is every element of this show that is working on the next level. And I don't know of another show that's doing it like this. That works on all the levels so well. And to close out the show, we have Jimmy gets to do a con. He didn't get to do it in the casino, as far as we know. He didn't get to make a lot of money, but he does go into his insurance place with a sob story about how, he's not in the law anymore, and could he maybe get back the money that he paid for malpractice insurance? But he forgets, he doesn't know his number, and he just happens to only drop his last name. And oh no, I'm not Chuck McGill. No, I'm sorry, I'm James McGill. I'm a different McGill, not of HHM. And he goes into this great fake breakdown, screaming and crying about how that everything is going bad for him. And I think that there is an element of this that is drawn from his real frustration. I think that he really does want to break down and cry at different moments in this episode, and he's pulling that up as actor Jimmy McGill, but he's not being sincere. He's definitely not being sincere when he talks about how he's upset that his brother doesn't love him anymore and hates him and all this stuff, because he just happens to bring up, oh, by the way, Chuck had a meltdown on the stand and got all these numbers mixed up. And don't write that down. Oh, ma'am, no, listen. No, don't take my brother's malpractice insurance away. Here's the thing. There's this moment as Jimmy's walking out, right? He wipes the sad smile off his face and he's got the nastiest grin. And in that moment, I didn't like Jimmy McGill. I didn't want him to succeed. I get all of the arguments about how Chuck sucks, and he does. Okay, he's slime and everything, and all of that. But Jimmy, just for his own sake, the fact that he's hanging on to this bitterness is so bad for him. It's a bad idea to keep hating someone for this long and to keep this retribution going, to say, well, you took my 12 months of law practice away, I'm going to take your malpractice insurance away. He keeps escalating, and I cannot get on board with the bitterness. I can get on board with him cutting ties with Chuck. I can get on board with him not loving Chuck anymore. I understand all that. The bitterness and the endless retribution that these guys have gotten themselves into, this cycle of warfare, is so disheartening. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like the show anymore. That's not where I'm coming from here. It's just that Jimmy McGill is coming to a place where I am not in favor of him as a character, and he's always been morally gray, right? I think Breaking Bad did this to a good extent as well, where, yeah, sure, Walter White was breaking the law and he was willing to do bad things, but for a while there, you could still be on board with him to a point. And I mean, all the way till the end, I was interested in seeing how he was going to do what he was doing. But by the final seasons of Breaking Bad, Walter White had turned into somebody who was not in any way a protagonist. He, in like a way that you could really get behind and root for. You could root for him because he was doing things in an intelligent way, and it's fun to see people, work through problems and figure out things the way Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul show them being worked through. But Walter White stopped being a likable character for me. And again, not a failing of the show. I think that was 100% intentional, because that's the arc that he's going through. And Jimmy McGill is starting to be on that same arc. I'm starting to see elements of Jimmy that I just can't justify. I just cannot defend. Even with the, all of the mitigating circumstances around everything that's happening, I cannot go with Jimmy on this journey as far as like being with him, and saying, oh man, good job, Jimmy. Yeah, you stick it to him. Not how I feel about this. Jimmy's going too far. He's going to get himself burned. Okay. Hanging on to bitterness like this is not going to work in real life. And in this show, regardless, it's not healthy, and it's gonna hurt him in the long run, and he's gonna turn into Saul Goodman. Maybe he always was all along. Maybe Walter White was always that proud, unable to stop himself guy at his heart, and this just gave him the opportunity all along. But for a while there, I was able to go with him. And here is the place where our paths diverge, Jimmy. I'm going to keep watching the show. I love the show. Love the story. I want to see what Jimmy keeps doing. But as far as Jimmy's feud with Chuck goes, he's gone too far in my mind as a fan. Just from my perspective, he's sunk too deep into this hole that he's dug for himself. He's become too far removed, and that's sad. It's sad to see. It's a natural. I understand how they've got here. The show's done a great job of bringing him here, but it's still rough. It's rough stuff. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of this episode. We've got a 2-week wait for the next one. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy not having to do one recap this next week, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with another better episode of the Better Call Saul recap. Take care, everybody. Again, love to hear your thoughts. I definitely read all the comments. I try to answer as many as I can, and I'll see you guys next week. No, I won't. 2 weeks. Take care.